All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. I'm your host today, Julian Gill, and I am joined by Bag Boy Alex. Glad you got home from work in time. And we've got a special guest today, Ken Rodenas, who many of you may know on the KissFAQ message board and elsewhere. Ken, what's your user handle?
Picks and Sticks.
There you go, and that should give you a little bit of a hint of why Ken is on the show today and what we're going to be talking about. But before we get into the topic at hand, Ken, I want to put you through the Inquisition that we put every new face on this show through. And that is the 90,000-foot view of your personal history. What was your Ed Sullivan moment that first drew your attention to the Kiss, to Kiss, rather than, say, getting interested in the Bay City Rollers?
I'm going to blame that one on my brother. My older brother, he was, I was in junior high school, and he was in high school. And he brought home Destroyer. He said, I got this new record. And he put it on, and... you know, we all know the intro, the starts the car and the radio comes on as the news blurb, and we're like trying to decipher this thing. And then, you know, those opening chords to Detroit Rock City, and just every song just keeps getting better, you know. King of the Nighttime World, God of Thunder, Shout It Out Loud, Do You Love Me? I was like, this is great. And then I start looking at the album cover, and I'm like, what's this cartoon all about? He goes, well, that's how they dress. And it was just like, this is the band for me. So literally that's how I discovered Kiss. My brother brought home Destroyer, and we both played it for the first time. And
was that in 1976 itself? And then did you watch the Paul Lynde Halloween special?
No, it would have been in 77 that this happened. And I missed the Paul Lynde special.
All right, so let's play some favorites here. You know, what was, obviously you've already answered the question of what your first Kiss album was. Do you have a favorite Kiss album, the one that you turn to when you're in the mood for some Kiss? You just seem to always gravitate to this album in particular.
Do live albums count?
Any album you want. If it's got Kiss's logo on it, you can pick Kiss icons if you wish.
For me, this may be a strange answer, but MTV Unplugged for me. And I think, you know, two reasons. One, you know, as Paul says, that night the music does the talking. And, you know, Eric, I think the finest performance Eric has ever played with the band. I mean, he didn't overplay. He was just spot on. I thought Eric made the show. And then the other part of it is, obviously, it started the hype for the reunion. And what's better than Kiss? Well, 6 members of Kiss on stage at the same time. So for me, you know, I thought it was a great collection of songs. I thought it was just a powerful performance. You got 6 members of Kiss. It started all the hype for the reunion. So for me, I got to go with MTV Unplugged. And I'm hoping on the cruise they invite Bruce up for at least a couple songs, so we can, for a couple songs, have a similar type moment and get 5 members of Kiss on stage.
Yeah, you know, on the cruise, if Bruce could teach Tommy Thayer how to play the guitar solo to Hide Your Heart and Unholy properly, I think that would be a win for all fans. But, you know, being serious, you know, getting Bruce up on stage with them would be absolutely fantastic. And you know what? To me, it would be a crime if they don't. So we give a lot of love to MTV Unplugged on this show. It seems to be one of those albums that was just one of those perfect moments in time, perfectly executed, beautifully filmed and recorded. And the performance,
the rock and roll over stage, and,
yeah,
you know,
the backdrops,
the big yellow logo with the purple lights, and the mannequins up top. Yep. You can't beat it.
You can't. So, last question in the Inquisition is, what flavor of Kool-Aid do you drink? Do you have a favorite member of the band?
I don't. I have a least favorite member, but I don't have a favorite member. To me, right, I support, you know, all eras of Kiss, and it takes 4 guys to make the show and to make all those records. So to me, they're all equally important. I'm not a huge Mark St. John fan, nothing against him personally by any means. In fact, he's a sweetheart. I've got a story about that maybe we can get into later, but I just don't think his style ever really was going to fit in with Kiss and work with Kiss. And, you know, his history isn't very long, you know, shuffling back and forth between Gene and Paul Studios for the one album and really only played, one full show and 2 half shows. So just not a lot of history there. So I would put him least favorite just simply because he had the least impact over the history.
Yep.
That makes sense, but it's nothing against him personally.
No, absolutely. Unfortunately, he's little more than a speed bump along the long road that is Kisstry, a long highway, more appropriately. Okay, so let's get into today's topic. And, you know, we brought you on the show for a reason, and that's for many, many years now. You've actually run a sub-site on the KissFAQ, picks.kissfaq.com, picks and sticks, hence your username. Alex, why don't you take over and explain why we're talking with Ken about this today?
So it's pretty cool. I actually got in touch with Ken. I myself was looking for any Vincent guitar pick and was just seeing what was the best avenue to go with. And of course, you know, I'm a history education major, and you know, you always want to go to the best source you can find. And Ken, with his site, it's definitely the most comprehensive source for guitar picks that anybody's looking for. And in fact, we'll get into some discussion on some pretty cool ones, including an elusive Asylum pick that Ken was able to figure out and find and so forth. That's why he's the comprehensive and the ultimate source. So we got in touch, and so it's been a couple months kind of in the making, and so it just worked out. And so I guess really, you know, the big thing, 'cause, I mean, as Kiss fans, I think everybody knows we can collect anything and everything from bootleg videos to T-shirts. I think, Julian, you had, 40, 50 copies of Kiss Alive, you know. There's always different things we can, of course.
The vinyl, the toys, you know,
exactly.
The Lego dolls, the pinball machines. Yeah, everybody's got their niche.
Exactly. And so I guess with Ken, what got you into getting into Kiss picks?
It's an interesting story, actually. Well, of course, obviously, huge Kiss fan, of course. You know, I live now in Cincinnati, and in '95, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame opened up in Cleveland. And that's only about a 4.5-hour drive. And so I went up there, was like, well, this is cool. You know, a museum dedicated to rock and roll. I got to go see this. Now, of course, remember, this is '95, so we don't have internet and Google. We don't know all the behind-the-scenes Jan Wenner politics or any of that. And of course, they've only had 1 or 2 induction ceremonies at that point. And so, you know, you've got the Beatles and Hendrix and Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and Janis Joplin, but there's not a lot else there. But of course, I didn't know any of that. So I drive up there, and I've got to see this museum and see all this. And I'm walking through the museum, and there's no Kiss anywhere. I was like mortified. I was like, how can Kiss not be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? It just was beyond belief to me, right? Because that's my world, right? Since I was 13 years old, Kiss was it for me. And so there was one display that really struck me, though. It was a fan-made display. There's a guy named Peter Lavinger, who was a kid in New York that would go into the city, and he would go to like Madison Square Garden or the Palladium or Nassau Coliseum, and he would try and, you know, get to the loading areas and try and get these musicians and try and get a stick, and if he could get it autographed. So there's this entire huge wheel of drumsticks.
Wow.
That he's collected, and he had thousands of them. But I walked away from it thinking, well, Kiss isn't in here. And here's something cool that this Peter Lavinger guy did. Maybe there's something I could do. Maybe I could, because I had started collecting picks in the 80s. So I had some. I didn't realize how big the universe was, but I had some. But my thought was, well, maybe I can put something together as a fan submission like this Peter Lavinger guy did, and Got to get Kiss in there that way, right? If they're not going to put them in, and Gene and Paul aren't going to donate stuff, maybe I can do something. And that's really how it sort of started. So naturally, I started to set about figuring out, you know, I've got to build up my collection. Now, you have to remember, again, this is still mid-90s, so internet is just starting to come together. And, you know, prior to that, you just didn't know what was out there. If you were collecting in the 80s, the only way that you could communicate and find other collectors is you would buy music magazines. And we would take out classified ads in the back of the thing saying, hey, I collect guitar picks. Here's my phone number. Call me. And so you would have a telephone conversation. You'd call somebody up. You didn't have to worry about fakes and bootlegs back then because, you know, signature picks only really came into vogue in the 70s. So by then, there weren't any bootlegs and you didn't have internet. So people didn't know what they looked like. And so people would call up and you would call. Trades took forever. Because if you wanted to see what the other guy had, you had to take a picture. And back then, you didn't have cell phones and digital cameras, so you got to take a picture. You got to get the roll of film developed. You have to snail mail your pictures to the other side. You know, so a trade could take like 3 months to materialize, right? Because you didn't want to speed through your roll of film. You know, it was a crazy time. But you know, I started doing research right around there, 96, 97, I think, is when AOL started to come out. You know, remember with the old dial-up with the 64K baud rate or whatever it was, but that was all you had. And so started on AOL, and I ran across a guy, we're still friends today. His name's Brian Bouchard. He was in Texas at the time, and he was serving in the military. He's in Maryland now. And Brian had started an AOL page called Brian's Kiss Picks. I was like, this is cool. Now I can start, you know, looking at some stuff that he's got that I don't have. And then I started sharing pictures of stuff that I had with him. And so we would kind of go back and forth. And so I would send him some photos and he would add them into his. And he just got to a point where, you know, he wanted to start a family, and it just, you know, I had a real passion for it, and he just didn't have it. He couldn't update it as fast enough. I mean, I would be out networking and finding all this information, and and finally he said, you know what, Ken, just take it. I'm going to send you the page. Just take it. And so I did, and then. Now I've said, okay, well, great. I don't know anything about web development. I've got to learn HTML. So, you know, I started to customize it, and I just changed it to Ken's Kiss Picks, right? How clever. But at least now I had control of it, and I could update it as quickly as I wanted. And then about 98, 99, I get an email from Mike Granville.
Yeah, I knew we were going to go there.
I've even got a Mike Granville pick.
Nice. The new Got Ilk pick, right. So I get an email from Mike Granville that says, hey, you know, I'm the webmaster for the new Kiss official website, Kiss Online, and I've seen what you're doing there. It's really cool, and I would love to bring that into Kiss Online. And I said, you know, hey, I'm flattered, but I had figured out at that point, Gene and Paul control everything. And I said, look, I'm really flattered, but my concern is, you know, I don't know where this is going yet. Because as I started to unturn rocks, I just realized that the universe was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I said, I just don't want to have thumb screws put on me. So thanks, but no thanks. So he came back to me and said, no. He said, look, we run it for him. He said, you will have full editorial control. He said, look, I only have two rules. One is don't post links that take people out of the site, right? Because we're trying to drive traffic in. It's like, okay, well, that's fine. I wasn't putting links anyway. And the other was, look, if there's anything that you're concerned about, anything that's controversial, let me know, and I'll talk to the band. But otherwise, just assume everything's okay. So I said, okay, let's give it a shot. And so, started sending my files. He set up access for me to be able to directly, do my own thing. And, he was the one that came up with the first version of the Picks and Sticks logo and actually named it Picks and Sticks.
Yeah, and that was one of the things, just to interject, is obviously I was another one of the parties that was approached because at the time, and people may not realize this, when Kiss wanted to do Kiss Online, they obviously, invited Mike to be webmaster and took the content that was otaku because of his experience there. They didn't take all of his content into there, but they approached Ken. I was approached by Mike to bring the KissFAQ in because of the discographies and a lot of that stuff, and a lot of the stuff that was part of the original FAQ back then, whatever I was called, we did discard because it didn't meet the band's parameters, which was perfectly fine. But one of the things, Mike was very supportive for me
Absolutely.
in bringing my material in. He said, we don't need this, and would always explain so. And the art department, whether it was him or people that were working on designing the site for them, did a great job with a lot of the logos that they came up for the FAQ part. So let's go back to where you were. So just wanted to interject that.
I would agree with all of that. But and that was sort of both a blessing and a curse at the same time. Going to Kiss Online, we'll talk about that because prior, Brian's site that I inherited was pretty new and pretty basic, and nobody, it's not like Google. Nobody knew how to really get to it, so a lot of people hadn't seen it. The only thing that had been in collector circles that had been published at all. Do you guys know Gary Kahn in Tennessee?
Yep.
Yeah.
Did a fanzine, didn't he?
He did. Kissaholics.
That's right.
Right? So the only thing that was out there is around the time of the reunion, he had done a couple of spreads, but they were black and white and a lot of errors in it, a lot of omissions and variations and those sorts of things. But it was a decent roadmap, right? I mean, if you think about, I guess, sort of, Christopher Columbus comes to America and does some sort of a weird map that doesn't look anything like we know it to be today. But then Magellan circles the globe, and now we have a crisp, picture of all the continents. So, he was the Christopher Columbus, so to speak, and I was more like the Magellan that followed afterwards. So I'm not dissing on Gary at the time. And again, that was still early 90s. You still didn't have the internet, so you didn't know what you didn't know.
No, and none of the fanzines would take offense at you saying that, because if you look back through the fanzines, and I do recommend that fans nowadays pick up some copies of these early 90s or even the 80s fanzines, that these guys were doing all this work by hand, all these layouts,
Absolutely.
Cutting and pasting type. The only time you'd see pics is when someone put one on the photocopier when they were doing their issue of a
That's it.
of a fanzine, or they were doing discographies with what they knew. I mean, Sherry and Tito Custer-Poser, doing the big Japanese discographies for certain fanzines back in the day. These are the prehistoric people who, gave us a foundation. People like Ken and myself who then built on those, whether it was with the FAQ for discography or Picks and Sticks for your area. These people we salute without a doubt.
Absolutely. And look, it was an invaluable resource because he had some stuff in there that wasn't in Brian's site and wasn't in my collection yet. So it gave me some things to start to ask some questions and poke around. So, so thanks to Gary, right? And so, Kiss Online then became sort of a double-edged sword. The downside of it was people assumed because it was on their website that I either worked for the band, and so I would get countless emails, can you send me a pic? Or that the band would just hand me stuff, right, because it was on their website, which isn't true. I mean, I had to, fend for everything and still do, just like every other, collector out there. I think Brandvold, in the whole 8 or 9 years I was on there, I think he sent me one Not counting the ones he did for the website, because he did a set for Kiss Online, but not counting those. But I'm talking actual tour pics. He sent me like one Peter Criss one time, and
he sent me a Paul Stanley.
See, you got Paul Stanley. Yeah. At least he plays with a pick. Peter didn't even play with him. And then, a few years ago, just out of the blue, Keith LaRue said, "Hey, give me your address again," and he sent me a pair of sticks from the cruise, which was very nice.
Jeez, that's really generous, and Keith is a classy guy, so that's a really nice gesture.
I've known Keith obviously for a really, really, really long time, and it was very nice. And I think I ran into him one time on the 40th anniversary show, and he gave me 2 or 3 picks there. So. But besides that, I mean, I'm really sort of off, just else to find the stuff. So, those were sort of the downsides. And, here's the thing, right? I felt obligated, because what would happen is the plus side of this course, obviously now you get this huge exposure. And it did, in a sense, allow me to use it as a calling card. Because if people now think that, well, it's on the band's official site, so you must work for the band, it now gave me an opportunity to just go start and bludgeoning the stick companies and the pick companies for information, which were all dead ends. What I found out is nobody kept any records. They didn't think of keeping any records, but they didn't want to admit that they didn't keep any records.
Of course not.
So, they would say, "Oh, well, you got to go talk to Doc McGee. He's the band's manager now." I was like, Doc doesn't know anything about guitar picks from 1978, What, are you kidding me? He wasn't even there. So, anyways, but it did allow me that. And then by having that exposure also, it opened up a whole new world to past crew members. Yeah. Because they, if you worked for Kiss for a significant period of time, you're still a fan of the band. That original Kiss Crew book that came out, and, things did, you get out of that a bad taste. Things didn't end as well as they would have liked. But even today, despite all of that, they're still huge fans of the band.
Oh, yeah, I think Mike Rush did a post on one of the Kiss collectible sites of just some of the stuff he picked up over the years, and I remember he put like a picture, like a handful of like pairs of drumsticks, and he was Gene's bass tech,
Right. Yeah, and I've got some interesting stories with Mike. Mike is, I think being away from Kiss for a couple of years now, I think has really de-stressed him. And he's definitely much more calm and reserved and outgoing than he used to be during his days with Kiss. When he was with Kiss, the reputation was, as a collector, don't you dare approach him, because he will bite your head off. I mean, he just really early on saw the, and right from a text perspective, you get this. He saw the greed in the collecting side of things, because he was a collector himself. Now he doesn't care about it. But back then, when he started with the band on Crazy Nights tour, he was collecting himself. And he would start out trading with guys, and then that wasn't good enough. Then guys would say, "Well, yeah, you work for the band, you got a whole bag of them, so now I want 2 or 3 for my..." And that just, and you get that night after night after night. And then around 98, 99, eBay comes into the picture. And now you've got people selling. And that just kind of did it for him. So he was just a guy that you just never asked for a pick unless you wanted a tongue lashing. And that was the reputation. But here's the thing: the reality is he's really a guy. Over time, we started out on a rough patch. I'll have to tell you that story. He'll probably kill me for saying this, but so I got an email one day from somebody that says, "Hey, I have these really rare picks, and you don't have them on your site. Give me your number. I'll call you. Let's discuss them." Okay, all right. I didn't know any better, so I said, "Here you go. Here's my number." So it's about 11:30 at night. Phone rings, and they're on the West Coast, so it's only 8:30 their time. I guess I weren't thinking about it. And I pick up, it's like, hi, this is Mike Rush from Kiss. You know who I am? I'm like, Mike Rush from Kiss? Yeah, I know who you are. Now keep in mind, I've only been on Kiss Online for about a year and a half. So, if that at that point. So I'm like, and here's an active tech, right? I've only talked to some past crew guys. Here's the guy, right? I mean, he's been with the band since 7. And I was like so excited. And he just starts screaming and fussing at me because I had put up these Psycho Circus tech pics that I had learned about. Apparently, and I don't even know the full story on those. I've heard multiple versions, but the version I heard was, the people at DeAndrea just wanted to do something nice for them because they were ordering so many freaking pics over the reunion, that never-ending 2-year tour, and which then folded into Psycho Circus, and they just wanted to do something nice. But I had also heard rumors that Gene and Paul were worried that they thought the techs were making them to sell them, and they were going to get in trouble. So, he thought, hey, you're going to get us all fired, and blah, blah, blah. It was horrible. So, I mean, I was freaked out. I had to email Brandvold and say, hey, I think we got to take those down. And he goes, no. So he faxes Gene. Gene, we have these up. Is this okay? And Gene says, yeah, it's fine, blah, blah, blah. But Mike was still he was not happy about it. So anyway, so we agreed that we would leave him up, but any others in the future, I wouldn't put them up. And I upheld that agreement, and I would never put his other picks up, even though I knew about them, and they were much harder to get because he does not give them out. And but I did know about them. But I kept my word, and I kept them off. But I did slowly at least earn his respect in that he could tell what I was trying to do, and when I would ask questions. They were knowledgeable questions, and I was asking stuff that he's like, your average collector wouldn't know some of this stuff. How do you know about this stuff? So I think he respected the body of work. And so over the years, I was probably one of the few collectors that he would actually engage in. I mean, he would, at least that's what he would tell me. He would send me and say, I get all these questions all the time. I just blow them off, but I will answer yours. And, so I think I sort of earned his respect, and now I think some of it's just the tension of working for that band. I mean, Gene and Paul are very demanding. They demand perfection, night in, night out. And that gets to be pretty stressful, I think.
Oh, you can only imagine the sort of stress that these guys operate under. When Gene or Paul do say something to the crew from stage, it isn't always an act, like laser pointers or, some shtick that they're working into the show. They are the consummate professionals and show people, and they want everyone in that audience to be getting 100% the bang for their buck. But what it sounds like you managed to do with him, you established your legitimacy, with the research and the work that you are doing on your side for your hobby. And right. That's respected, whether it's Gene or Paul or Tex or anyone. If you establish your professionalism and your knowledge of your topic, that's always going to be respected more than, say, just the overriding passion. If you're backing it up, then no doubt that's going to become very respected by them. And there are some people who, manage to interact with them on that level, whether it's of Mike or Gene and Paul or whomever, close to the organization. So you get a lot out of that. Before, I want to talk a little bit more about Kiss Online, but I do want to ask you one question, while we're early into this episode. What was the first guitar pick that you ever obtained? And what was that one that set you on this road? And then what was your first Kiss one, if that is not your first pick?
Let's see. I think the first two, and I don't remember which came first, but Zebra was that band. I love Zebra. I was trying to get them on the cruise so bad. They were from New Orleans, right? But I caught after a show in the early 80s, I caught a bass pick from Randy, and And I was so mad because there's a generic. I was so upset. Didn't say zero or have his name on it. I was so mad. But I kept it. And I stuck it away with my ticket stub. And I think the first name or signature pick I ever got would have been a Rick Nielsen. You know, those handfuls during Dream Police, and you're anywhere in the first 10 rows, it's almost impossible to walk away without getting a pick. So I think that was the first signature pick.
There's nothing worse in concert than you actually get a pick, you flip it over, and it's a generic Herco. Or, you know, from Gene, you know, one of those, you're like, nuts.
Yeah. Well, now he has signature Hercos. They have a signature on them.
Yeah.
There you go. That's one of them. Alex.
Now, it's just interesting. You guys know about the variations on the Hercos?
I know nothing about Hercos other than all the generic ones I've had in my time from shows.
Okay, so see where it says Made in USA? Hopefully you can see that.
A little bit.
Yeah, not good enough to bootleg.
All right, well, they accidentally put a semicolon after the A in USA, so then they had to redo the mold and do it with a period. And the molds cost like 17 grand to make, so they just didn't throw out the old one. So almost all Hercos, both the generics and even the new Genes, you'll see both versions with the semicolon and the period.
Wow, that's pretty arcane to even notice that.
That's the level of detail that I stoop to. Yes.
So do you have OCD?
When it comes to guitar picks, I do.
I got my first pick just because of doing it. I wrote Tommy Thayer an email, and he had sent. He just got this envelope, and then, you know, I feel.
That hit and run tour, 2007.
It was 2003. It was like right at the symphony, right at the Kiss Symphony, and I kind of regret myself because it just came in a white envelope, and his return address was a stamp, but the handwriting, it was handwritten for my address, and I don't know where the envelope went, but then I later saw more of his handwriting. He handwrote that envelope, and I'm like, son of a gun, I need to find the envelope. He wrote my name, like, where is that? And so that was my first one, and then I was shortly a concert. I went to see Paul on the Live to Win tour, and right after Love Gun, he came over and handed me the pick, and I had a meltdown. I was like, oh my goodness.
I got to see Live to Win twice. I saw it in the two shows that were filmed, Detroit and Chicago.
Yeah.
So sweet. Okay,
well, since you've both mentioned your first pick, what was mine? Mine, I believe, was Farewell Tour, and it would have been Marysville because we were front row there. And at the end of the show, on the ground were Peter Criss picks. So I picked up a couple because obviously no one wanted them. I'm like, you know.
Well, they knew they were there, right? Peter would come out to sing Beth sing his encore, and he would throw roses to the girls and throw a handful of picks. Well, nobody knew he was doing it.
Yep, and that was the only way I got a pick. So I was really thrilled. I don't remember which one. It might have been the one with like the fist or something on the back. It wasn't a fist. It was a finger. Okay,
it was 5-finger salute.
So that was my first pick, and I've had a few through my time. The only ones I still have around, I've actually got Kiss Online, but mine are all played. If I have a pick, it usually ends up being used on my guitar. Apart from the most recent Freedom to Rock ones, which are still sitting up in a photo frame. So that was my first. Alex, you had a question.
You can't use the band pick. Well, interesting thing. If you want to know the history on the finger pick.
Yeah.
Peter didn't make those. If you remember on that tour, Ted Nugent was opening. Nugent had a pick like that. Peter thought it was kind of funny, so they went and made them for him. But I think he very quickly realized, this probably isn't a good image. It says Kiss on one side and a middle finger on the other. That's probably not putting the band in the best image. And he put a halt to that and went on to other designs. But anyway, it wasn't something that Peter came up with. It was Nugent's guys that came up with it, and then his guys thought, oh, well, we'll make some of those, Peter, because he thought it was funny. But I think he realized.
Was that the first drummer pick for the band?
Because Eric Carr didn't have picks to the Rockology, right?
Right. Well, now of course those were made
Yeah.
posthumously, so
Yeah, of
he
course.
didn't make those. Yeah, I think reunion tour would have been the first picks. Peter had picks on reunion.
So I guess because I love getting the story of what got you into the picks, and I guess because hopefully we'll get some education for some of the fans that listen. But because I know I've seen, I wish I had it. I've seen the picks. Could you send me one? Because we traded. I actually remember trading you one of these red picks a couple years ago when Ace Frehley did his first few shows when he came back in 07, 08, and you sent me one from New Jersey, an orange Ace Frehley pick for one of the red ones. I wish I still had the case for it because I put in a little sleeve. But what size? I know you used the coin holders. Was it a $50 size that you used, or the dollar size?
I don't use coin holders. Nope. I'm anti-coin
not the
holder.
cardboard.
Oh, sometimes when people ship to me, they'll send them in them. So if I'm mailing them out just to keep the pick protected, I'll stick it in there and mail it back out. But I couldn't tell you
what's your best method then for storing, I guess, for those who are kind of collecting picks and stuff? What's your best method that you...
Well, that's a common question. So, right, for me, you have to understand my purposes are different in that, right, for me, it's not about the collection, right? For me, it's about trying to document a history. And so I was constantly I have to constantly go pull mine out. I would get all kinds of emails. Is this real? Is this fake? Or I may have a variation from the old one. So like, especially when Reunion came out and they had all these different holofoils and I'd have to say, oh, is that this one or this one? So I have to constantly access. People wanted to photograph them for books, magazines, and all kinds of crap. So my usage is a little bit different. I use sort of tackle boxes and dividers, and I have a different system than most. Here's the thing, old celluloid, and if you can ever find this book, I don't know if it's still in print. It's called Picks by Will Hoover. It came out in 95. Talks about all the history. Great book. Talks all about the history of plectrums from the beginning of time. But it talks about celluloid, which is the plastic that is most commonly used, especially used in those early 70s, early 80s. And celluloid is a very, very unstable plastic. It has camphor in it, and it has nitroglycerin, which is what's used to make dynamite. So it's just an unstable compound to begin with. So if you expose it to high-intensity light, extreme heat, or you cut off air circulation, it will smother itself and set off a chemical reaction. So I don't like to put them in coin holders because you're trapping air, and then people are sticking them in vinyl sleeves in a book, closing the book, and then sticking the book somewhere. And in my opinion, closing off 4 levels of air like that is just not at all healthy. So for me, I keep mine loose in a tackle box. I mean, the best way to put them is get yourself a wooden box, make a felt line box, a cigar box, something like that, a plastic tackle box, anything like that, to me is preferable than coin holders. Now look, other guys will tell you they've used coin holders for 30 years and never had a problem. And that may be true, but I can show you hundreds of photos that people have emailed where they pulled their book out of their basement where it's just been sitting in a cool, dry place for 20 years. They open the book, and boom, in the coin holder, the pick is just shredded into powder.
Okay, that's great. I think I might want to take that Ace Frehley pre-Kiss pick out of that picture frame up there and get it into some air.
Yeah.
And in more sad news, KissFAQ Mr. Julian is in the hospital for an explosion in his house. But that's sweet.
I think you sent me, that was a tortoise pick. I think you sent me a photo of that.
Yeah, that I got from Bill Bartell, who got it from Ace's mother way back when. So, whether or not it actually has the providence of being played by Ace pre-Kiss, it certainly came from Ace's mother. And, Bill was a pretty big collector while he was alive. So, who knows? It's still got a good story attached to it. So.
Awesome.
Well, and I know, we obviously, there's so many picks to go through. We don't have enough time to go through that, but of course, I definitely want to recommend checking out Ken's stuff. But we talked a little earlier, and Ken talked about, or at least with me, messaging through Facebook about the Asylum era, that there was it a brown pick that was an elusive brown pick that even Ken was telling me that everybody said you're not going to find it, it never existed, and yet Ken, through all the hard work and dedication, which is what I found out through through history and through collecting, sometimes you gotta work really hard and get through all the no's that people tell you. And so Ken, show us that story about finding that pick.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? People don't see the research behind the site. So I had learned about the Brown Asylum picks probably in the early 90s. And I remembered seeing a fanzine back in the day that had photos, and you could see them in the photos. But I had somehow, in moving with college, somehow I had lost the magazine. So I no longer had the photographic proof, but I couldn't unsee what I knew. And so, funny story. So 98, 99, somewhere in there, Bruce was with Union at one of Keith's indie expos. And I didn't know Bruce at that point. So, but I started asking him, overzealous pick guy. And so I started asking questions, and I, of course, had to ask him about the Brown Asylum. And he said, "No, there were no Brown Asylums. We had, these 5 colors don't exist." And Keith was standing right there. And literally anything controversial that came up for like the next 15 years, Keith's answer always to me was, "Yeah, right, just like the Brown Asylums that don't exist." So over time, like, I knew they existed, right? I don't ask questions about stuff unless I have done my research, know what I'm chasing after, right? Because otherwise it's a waste of my time. So slowly, bit by bit, I'd actually gotten a hold of a Bruce pick, and I narrowed it down to these brown picks were only used for 2 or 3 shows in and around the Chicago area. Yeah. I literally limited it down to I even found the photographer that took the photos for the magazine.
Wow.
So, yeah. And they went to the Chicago show, so that's how I know what shows they were from. And then I was in St. Louis visiting a friend of mine, and he spills out a whole cup of guitar picks on his pinball machine, on his 78 Kiss Bally pinball machine. He goes, "I know there's nothing in here you need, but take a look anyway." And I'm sifting through, and oh my God, there's a Brown Jean Asylum. I was freaking out. He's like, "Why, you need that one?" I was like, "Yes, I need that one." I go, "But," he goes, "Well, just take it." He's like, "You don't understand. This is like a really valuable pick." He goes, "Take it." So when I got home, of course, I put together a really nice package and mailed it to him of some other pretty rare stuff for my own conscience, Yeah. So now I had the 2. And now I just needed the Paul. And I had seen a couple of them over the years. They just somehow eluded me. And one came up recently for bid on eBay, and I was able to snipe it and snag it and complete the set. And it's funny, no sooner did I complete the set, I found the photos. So I have all these photos of Gene with a nice white base, BC Rich white base. So with clear as day, Brown Asylum picks with gold print. So now I have the proof, right? So I, of course, blast an email with the photos to Keith and Bruce. And I'm like, "Well, look who's laughing now. And by the way, I completed my set." So thank God I didn't take no for an answer. And here's the thing. I even talked to the techs from the tour, and they said the same thing. Brown picks didn't exist. I don't have any brown picks. I ordered them. They don't exist. Well, the photos don't lie. I saw the photos pre-internet. They couldn't have been doctored. They were published in a magazine. And so anyway, they did exist. They were used for a couple of shows in the Chicago area. Super rare. And I only know of one other complete silence with all 6 colors.
Wow.
It's pretty sweet. And now, obviously, I always want to feel like that might have been the Holy Grail for you at that time. Is there
at that time it was
at that time? Is there a Holy Grail pick out there? I mean, because seriously, the sites you have is so intense with everything. Yeah. Is there a Holy Grail that you've been looking for now?
There is, but and I'm not going to get into detail on it, because one of the things I've learned over time is if I show that, people use it as leverage.
Yep.
But there's a really rare prototype out there that literally nobody knows about. And if I could ever get a hold of it, and I've seen one, and I've verified it through other sources, right? I double, triple verify everything. So I know it's legitimate, and I have photos of it. And if I ever find one, it'll blow people's minds. So that's the Holy Grail, but my understanding is only about a half dozen were made, and I'll likely never see it. But as far as the history goes, no, not, at this point, there are no more Holy Grails for me, because I believe through the end of 2014, I think I now have the only 100% complete collection in the world. I need 5 from 2015. I'm complete 2016. And now I have to, go chase all the 2017 stuff. And I could go and, buy the 5. But for me, I have made the most awesome friends doing this over the 20 years. So, I always describe it as my labor of love. And so I would much rather trade for them, because that's how you meet people and make new friends. And then if you find somebody else that's in the hobby and also looking for stuff, right? Keep an eye on what each other's looking for, and then you've got more eyes, because now you've got somebody else looking. I mean, as Alex said earlier, hey, we did a trade on some ace picks back in 708.
Yeah,
right?
10 years ago.
Right, 10 years ago. Now here we are. Right, he still remembers. Hey, we did a trade. And here we are.
I think it's one of the exciting things, and it's funny, because I think some people might not, be into picks or whatnot, because everybody's got their niche. Everybody has a niche of what they collect. And I think the guitar picks, though, I think they're one of the fun souvenirs you can get from a show. I mean, I remember when I saw Ace the second time, and why I was able to do a trade, because his bass player handed me a handful of picks. He was like, he signed my ticket, and the other guy it was Anthony Esposito, and I've got a couple of his picks, and they all signed it, but Ace couldn't do any signing, but he hands me like a handful of guitar picks and stuff. And I remember like the people around me were, they're just kind of already amazed I knew who the guy in the band was, and then they're like, "What did he give you?" And I'm like, "Oh, just a couple picks." I'm like, "I'm gonna tell you, he gave me a handful of them and stuff." And
right. Well, here's the thing. I mean, right. So people know. For me, right, it's not about, like, I don't sell picks. I mean, the curse that I talked about with Kiss Online, I'd get all these emails, "Hey, send me a pick, send me a pick." What people don't realize is I would mail picks out of my own collection. I'd get a letter from whatever, some teenage girl in Greece. I love Paul Stanley. They never ever played here, and I'd mail her a pick out of my collection. I mean, if I had a nickel for every pick I gave away, I'd be on the cruise every year.
Yeah, and giving away a pick, 2004 Rock the Nation tour, it was, here are picks, I picked them up, and there's a kid. You give the kid a pick. I mean, it was just one of those things, I guess, as maybe an older fan, that you feel you're passing it on to the next generation, or you're just, playing it forward with a good turn for someone, whether they're a fan. But, Kiss Online, let's go back there a little bit to, when did you bring the site out of Kiss Online, and was it, I had asked to take the FAQ stuff out because I just felt I needed to have a separate identity. It was it was basically ego. It was nothing to do with Mike or or anything he had done, because he'd always been very supportive of me and what I was trying to do. But I wanted, to have the KissFAQ.com and just have it all for myself. And even though, I got a benefit out of being part of Kiss Online, but with your site, what was kind of the story with that?
Well, mine was different, and this will probably jog your memory, Julian. Well, what happened for mine was, when Mike left Kiss Online, and they were in the interim, and then they eventually hired Keith. There was a void in there for a period of time. And when Keith came in, you have to remember at that time, Eric had now been seen in the Catman makeup, right? And now they were going to try and bring Tommy in. And so I think the challenge that when they hired Keith, I think the challenge was, Keith, what we need you to do is we need you to focus on the band today and moving forward. And so there was a pretty conscious effort. They decided to redesign and rebrand the whole site, and they changed the code again from whatever it was, PHP to CSS, style sheet. And I didn't know any of that. And everything was in flux, and they didn't have the resources to do the conversion for me. And Keith was focused on the rebranding and figuring out how they're going to generate sales go forward and get people to buy into the new Kiss. And so pretty much one day they just relaunched the site, and all those old features were just gone.
Yep.
There was a lot of them that just weren't maintained. Girls of Kiss and Kiss rooms and tribute bands that people had started and just let go by the wayside. For me, I'm constantly editing mine. I don't know how often you look at the stats on KissFAQ, but I'm constantly editing and tweaking and working, and it was, but all of a sudden it was just gone. So it is what it is, and so at that point I had to decide, okay, do I just, I had everything backed up, so I had to decide, do I want to just publish this someplace else, or do I just want to go offline? And I started getting floods of emails from webmasters who all wanted it. Collectors were freaking out because that's their Bible, as they call it. And so Julian was one of the people that reached out, and of course, obviously, Julian, I knew you through Kiss Online, right, managing all the message boards for all those years, and I just felt that, well, look, here's a whole site dedicated to as a reference site. It's dedicated to the history. You want to know tour dates, who played on what, who recorded what, who produced what, you go to KissFAQ, right? That's what it is. So I just figured it just made the most sense to be part of KissFAQ, because that's really what I was trying to do, is just trying to document something historically.
Yeah, and from my point of view, all I was trying to do was, I've done it for a couple of other websites who have subdomains at the KissFAQ, and it was more that I'm paying for hosting anyway. All I had to do with you was say, well, here's the subdomain, here's your FTP account. I think I worked with you on the design, getting it, because I'm a pure HTML guy still. I do not do CSS very well.
I am too.
I do PHP now, but that's very much HTML-based PHP. I'm just using a few commands here and there to import pages, mainly ads. So I'm a very rudimentary Neanderthal when it comes to web design. I'm not using all the tools that Kiss Online was using. So I remember we worked together. It probably took a couple of weeks to come up with a basic design, and I think that's still in play today. So it's like, Ken, here you go forth and prosper. And I'm able to say, and I do need to update it, and as we spoke about before we started this the show today, that you're not heavily advertised, are you?
No, but you know what, it's interesting. Google Kiss Picks, and it's the one thing that comes up. The one thing is, having done it for so long and having literally uncovered all the stones, and, now people take it as gospel, but there's a lot of stuff in there that we can talk about some of that. I know one of them is the Pastor music picks that I know Alex wants to get to. Were pretty controversial at the time. And anyway, but nowadays people accept it because have vindication. I've been able to prove these things, like the Brown Asylums. And so
the Brown Asylums, that sounds like something I got to try and collect a set of now.
Forget it. Don't. I'll see it. I'll tell you what, I'll see you in about 30 years.
Hey,
It's about
it's an Asylum challenge. What better for the guy who got into the band with that album, the
so,
Brown
but now,
Asylums?
but now I've been doing it for so long that I'm fairly established. People know what I'm about, and so I've developed a lot of friends. Unfortunately not within the Kiss inner circle, but in other bands. And so I get invited to a lot of shows, and they just know my collecting habits. I don't even have to ask anymore. Oh, hold on, let me get it for you. And I just show them. They just hand it to me. So let's get this out of the way so we can have fun and chat.
Alex,
Which is kind of nice.
before I let Alex ask you about the Pastore picks and kind of the beginning of Kiss Pickology, I do want to ask you a question that relates to, obviously, Tom Shannon's about to publish his Kiss My Wax book, which is his work for many years on cataloging every variation of various albums. In recent years, I'm going to show up for people watching the show. Kiss Army Spain put together a 12-inch singles book. Kiss Army Spain, again, cassettes book. What's the likelihood or possibility of you doing a reference book, a physical print book? Would you be interested in that sort of challenge? Would it be something that you think would be worthwhile doing for collectors to be able to sit on their toilets and look, oh, there's the Brown Asylum push? Would
You're
you
talking to me or to Alex?
No, to you. I mean, do you have an interest in doing a print book now that you see collectors doing all these other sorts of books?
Well, I would love to. I actually had started one. Do you guys remember Kiss Quarterly?
Yep.
The official Kiss magazine? So, issue 5. See, I brought props. If you go right behind the poster, I had done a whole article. So, find yourself number 5. Unfortunately, it was interesting that they did some editor's proof, so it's kind of grain. It came out grainy, and I noticed somewhere one of the photo titles got slammed in the middle of a paragraph someplace, which is kind of weird. But I had done a whole expose, and then I had done a follow-up article. I think I got like 8 to 10 pages. So, the thing is, it's photo intensive.
Yep.
I mean, so anyway, I did this, and then I had written a second one on the drumsticks. And that was going to be in the next issue, but that's when they went out of business. So, and it was interesting because the feedback from the editor, because Paul and Gene reviewed everything that went into the magazine.
Yeah,
so on the Pix articles, Gene's feedback was, and I quote, I'll never forget it, "I don't care about any of this stuff, and I don't think anybody else will." Wow, I was shattered, but Warren, who's the publisher, said, well, we're going to do it anyway. And then I did one on the drumsticks, and the feedback from Paul was, oh, this is very interesting. And I was like, oh, here we go again, like, interesting. He goes, no. He truly meant it in a good way. He really enjoyed the article. I mean, but that was going to be slated. So at the time, I figured, well, I had already roughed out some stuff at that point. And so I had started to actually put a book together, and I had a good 50 to 60 pages written, and the hard part was my thought process was I want to show the pics, but then I want to show photos on the mic stand, so people can see them in concert. You know what I mean? Not just the pics themselves. So now you got to go, how do you get those, and photo releases, and and how would I pay for that? And I guess my vision is to do it right would have to be full color, and we would need to be a coffee table style book, right? Photo style book. And I just figured it's going to be way too expensive to print, and I just didn't know what the audience would be. So definitely open to it. Interestingly enough, I had it all backed up on a secondary hard drive, and I was reformatting a new master drive. Back then, didn't know that the backup drive, that there's a separate setting if you want to specifically code it as a slave drive. So when I went to format my new drive, the computer recognized the old one, and zoop, buy my book. I was in tears. I got all kinds of software to see if I could recover it, and I couldn't. So
Yep.
I never went back and I never went back and rewrote it. But I've got it all in my head. I would. I mean, I would if there was interest and could find a publishing outlet. Sure, I'd be interested.
Well, I say if Kiss Army Spain could put out an 80-page full color book on Spanish cassettes, that collectors of picks and sticks would certainly probably be interested. Now, obviously, there are the feasibility issues. Alex, let's go back in time and talk about Pastore and the beginnings of Kiss's picks.
Yeah, definitely want to. I think it'd be a great story to kind of finish up everything. I know we're clocking in just a little over an hour, but yeah, I know the story picks, as Julian says. I'd love to hear a little bit about them, though, because they're kind of the beginning of the Kiss picks.
They are, and it's interesting. I'm going to pull out those the Gary Kahn again. When he first released his fanzine, all he had was the Gene. He didn't have the Pastores there. So I had heard about the Pastores. One of the characters who's a great friend now that I had run into in my research is a legend in the sound industry named Night Bob.
Yeah.
So, and Night Bob has worked on and off mixing Ace Frehley from the 80s. He did all the Monsters of Rock, Kiss Crazy Nights shows. He's worked with everybody in the industry. I mean, just legend. And he is a walking encyclopedia. He remembers every show that he's ever worked at or been to. And you can show him a photo from 35 years ago. He'll tell you what he ate for breakfast and what he was wearing and what happened to the show. I mean, just massive encyclopedia. And so I asked him, because he was from originally northern New Jersey and knows everybody and is a big gearhead. So I started asking him. He goes, oh yeah, I've known the Pastore family for a really long time. He goes, those picks definitely exist. I've seen the original artwork. He said, the guy you want to talk to, he said, get in touch with Richie Rano from Stars.
Yep.
Because Stars was managed by a Coin on the same label as Kiss, and he's also from New Jersey, and he also knows the Pastores, and he was around back then. So he put me in touch with Richie, and so Richie and I started talking. So here's the story behind him. And we don't know all of it. I mean, because just nobody remembers. But here's the deal. What we do know is Pastore was trying to outfit big bands, right? They wanted to do sales. So Richie knew Dave Pastore, who's the owner of the store, since about 73 from his first band called The Stories. Around 75, he joined a band called Fallen Angel, which morphed into Stars, which was being managed by Rocksteady, which was Bill Aucoin, Joan Byewich's company. So they're now being managed by Aucoin. He took Sean Delaney one day into Pastore Music Store. It's in Union City, New Jersey, I think it is. And they bought a bunch of gear. Sean bought a bunch of gear for Kiss. And so they said, here, have some picks. Pastore's a pretty smart guy. Hey, if we're paying for him, I better put my name on him. And, oh, by the way, that's a tax write-off because it's advertising expense. And, there are other bands. I mean, he gave Richie some, so I have a Stars pick of Richie's with Pastore, and I've seen Nugents and Blue Oyster Cults, and, they were trying to do everybody back then. Right? They wanted to be like a big major national tour outfitter. And so anyway, that's where they came from. Now, the big mystery is, why doesn't Jeans have that? I've never seen one with Jeans. And to this day, don't know the answer to it. My gut tells me is, even back then, Gene was playing these Hercos, and my gut tells me they thought, well, Gene doesn't need them. That's one possibility. And then afterthought, they said, well, gee, how do we leave Gene out? We better order him some picks. And if the band's paying for them, they're not going to advertise for Pastoral. That's one possibility. One might be Gene said, I'm not advertising for you if you don't pay me. That's a possibility. Don't really know why Gene's doesn't have it on there. I'm yet to get anybody that remembers. I've asked and asked. Don't know, but I've never seen one.
And I'm sorry, I'm distracted right now. I'm just looking through a receipt book from 1973 because I do remember seeing an order for a couple hundred picks, and I'm just trying to find out what store it was. So, Alex, continue on with
70. No, it could have been 73.
No,
75?
No, this is definitely before the first album. They ordered a bulk order. I think it was 200 picks before going into the studio. They would have been custom picks at that point. But it's just
generic. That would have been generic.
Yeah, they would have been for recording the album. So not to throw away in shows because they didn't have anything scheduled at that time. So it's just more. I want to see where they bought them from to see if it was
That'd be neat. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it while Alex asks the next question.
I always say, Ken, we're kind of obviously wrapping up and so forth, and I can't thank you again for coming on. Is there a favorite pick though that you have that you just thought I like the design or whatnot, the color combination to it at all? Or
I think I
know for myself because I've got a couple of some Kiss Cruise picks from, and I just I don't like the orange color. I almost kind of feel like I like Paul to have a purple pick or Tommy having blue on a pick, or I saw like Eric Singer has the Lakers pick, and I'm like, at least for me, I'm like, not crazy for that. They're like one that you thought like I like that pick, that looks good. That's
there's two I guess that come to mind if I had to pick a favorite, which I try not to do, but the ones from Japan from about 2015, I call it the Mount Fuji faces. It's got the faces down the side and the Mount Fuji. It's just absolutely work of art. I love that one. And then my other favorite was when they played Sturgis, I want to say 2008 maybe. I don't know. I'll have to look it up on the site. But they did the Kiss logo, sort of an Evel Knievel design with all the stars in the logo. And I'm a huge Evel Knievel fan. So to me, just because it's sort of the mixture of Kiss and Evel Knievel, I would say would be my favorites there. On the stick side of things, probably where I have more of my prized possession.
So, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when did you really start getting into the sticks in addition to the picks? Because obviously we're talking about picks and sticks here today, and your basis is in the picks. When did sticks? You did mention Cleveland and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, seeing that design, but when did you get into the Kiss stuff? And what are some of your favorites there?
As soon as I started the picks, I probably started on the sticks the following year. And of course, right, I'm a glutton for punishment, right? I can't have one stick. I got to have the pair. So I spent a lot of time trying to match them up. I have some stuff in my collection I just have no business having. The movie Detroit Rock City, where they throw the drumstick out in the air,
Yep.
Jam catches the stick. Like, I have the movie prop sticks.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and when Peter re-signed with Promark after his Ahead deal wound down, and he re-signed with Promark in 2006, I'd become real friendly with the Promark guys. And the initial prototype that they did that never got released to the public, they ended up doing something completely different. But I have a pair of those. I have a pair of the Vader tried to get him during the farewell tour, and I have a pair of those prototypes. And then when Promark was trying to sign him, they sent him a whole batch of sticks, different sizes, weights, thicknesses, tips,
Yep.
and said, play these, try them out, send us back whichever ones you like, but they're completely just bare, right? They're just bare wood. There's no printing on them. But he mailed them back, and my friend said, you know what? You got to have one of these. I'm keeping one, and you get one. So I had the actual stick that he played and said, here, this is what I want you to make me for my endorsement. I just have crazy stuff that I have no business having. But I've earned a reputation. They know that I treasure the stuff. I'm not out to make a buck. I don't sell it. I've never sold a pick in my life. I'll just give them away. I mean, I have. And I think that's part of the success is, you know, nowadays it's a lot easier for me today than it was back then, because now that I'm sort of established and people know my reputation and the work that I've put in and how close I am to complete now, you know, now we've got what I call the friends of the program. Now I've got people that, now it's everybody's site. Like the collectors out there, everybody wants to see it completed and see it done. You know, Paul talked about, you know, the excitement of the Brown Asylum. Like everybody knew that was my Holy Grail that I had been looking for almost 15 years. It was like the one pick that kept me from being complete. And so, like, when I got that, I mean, I can't tell you the phone calls, the texts, the emails of congratulations. Like the whole world, like the whole collecting world is excited. And so I have, you know, friends now that, you know, as they go to shows and, you know, they pick up, hey, I got some extras. I'm going to send these off to Ken because they're the new stuff and I know he won't have that. And, you know, and then there's other guys that have gotten smart and said, hey, you know, the newer stuff now, you can go buy that through their licensee. So let me go find the ones Ken doesn't have. I'll buy those and then I can trade for his other stuff because he trades pretty generously. He'll sometimes trade. He's an idiot. He'll send me 2 or 3 for my one. But, you know, that's just, to me, it's just a karma thing. I'm so blessed to have the friendships that I've developed over the years and the fellow fans, and, you know, that, yeah, I just feel it's sort of an obligation to sort of pay back. So anytime I can do that, I do. And sometimes I don't tell people. One of my favorite things to do is what I call blind packages. I'll just put something in the mail and address it, right? Because someone sends me something, like, I'm keeping every envelope because I have their return address. And sometimes I'll just mail something off unannounced. And think about how cool that is. You have a crappy day, you come home, and all of a sudden there's an envelope in the mail, and you open it up, and whoa, it's KissFAQ in here. How cool, right? Yeah. I mean, just make somebody's day.
The waves of karma, the little changes that you can make in life just by making someone happy. You know, we're going to definitely have to have you back on the show. And what I would like people to do out there, obviously we have not covered a lot of ground today. You know, we've talked about the history,
the rich history. I've got great like the research behind the scenes stories that we didn't get to talk about.
Yeah, and we have barely scratched the surface. I did find the receipt, by the way. And
cool.
I'll just read you the details on it. It's Terminal Music in New York City. Ace Frehley bought 1 gross of white medium picks, October the 10th, 1973. And of course, everyone knows what a gross is. And 1 set of Ernie ball strings. So for a grand total of $6.70. I just, you know, when you find stuff like that, you know, obviously they're not going to be custom picks. That's a bag of workman picks, just like any of us who play guitar have a stack of them, just easy to hand for when one doesn't feel right, grab the next one. And when you're about to go and record your debut album, you're going to need a few. So, you know, that's one of the really cool stories. And just getting back to another one of your comments, you know, I think every serious collector out there doesn't want to hoard knowledge. That if they've got a pick that they've come up from a particular situation that's not on your side, usually they will want to share. There are very few people who are going to sit there going, you know, I've got this and you don't, and up yours and all that. You know, it's the collector community is a wonderful thing most of the time.
Agreed.
Obviously, we all know about some of the frustrations that do come with it in very, very rare cases. But there are people who are just so willing to share knowledge, to send you something, to offer to help buttress the website. And I do want to say again that you can find Ken's website at picks.kissfaq.com. It's there. It's been there for many years. It is there. It, like some other parts of the site, are kind of forgotten nether regions of the website. Have you thought about buying a custom domain and linking it? And, you know, is there kisspicsandsticks.com, you know, on the horizon for you maybe?
I haven't really. I mean, you know, here's the thing, right? I'm not selling anything. My goal was to document a history, and you know, and to get it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Well, you know, unfortunately, the mission has changed because First of all, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is so big now that now they don't accept fan presentations, so that's out. And the other thing was, in one of my conversations with Eric Carr's sister, she shared with me, because she had put Eric's drum kit on display there, and they lost some stuff. They lost some hardware, and they eventually, I believe she got it all back eventually, but it took them several months. And I'm thinking, if you're losing pieces of a hunky metal drum kit, like, are my picks going to disappear? So, so the mission at that point had changed. And for me, it's really about documenting the history and sharing that. It's not about the picks themselves or my collection. So I'm not really out there advertising it for anything. There's nothing in it for me from that perspective. For me, I think what's going to happen is, there are some guys that get it right away. Like Bruce, for example, he loves it. He has me do a separate section specific to him on his website. And he loves to sit and talk picks with me, and whenever he's got anything new, he makes sure I have it. And sometimes he'll even ask me, what do you think about these colors? Or I'm choosing between these designs. He doesn't always choose my opinion, but he asks still, which is kind of cool to be asked. And then there's other guys like, Eric Singer, where his webmaster has asked me to do a section for him, and I do my best, but Eric, it's just not his thing, and he's not going to go out of his way to help me. And it's hard. I got to try and find fans in Europe and Japan and Australia who's going to, or Canada, who's going to a show. Can you go to the merch booth and get me a set of sticks? Always
a struggle.
It's always a struggle. Yeah, it is. It really is. It's and the thing is, right, because at this point it's like I'm so close, right? Don't want to miss anything.
Yeah. Well, Ken, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Like Julian said, we gotta have you on again. Even just to hear some more of the pick stories, and of course, even some of the other episodes we've done. It'd probably be great to get some of your opinions. I don't know how many other KissFAQ episodes you've watched, but you've definitely been a wealth of knowledge. I've enjoyed it. I feel Julian's enjoyed it. I love seeing that receipt that you found, Julian. That's always the fun thing with talking with you guys. And just thank you again for coming on and sharing your knowledge with us and sharing it with us. And we look forward to having you on again.
Yeah, absolutely, Ken. I want to echo the appreciation, and also just give a shout out to everyone out there. Ken is a wealth of knowledge. If you've got any specific questions that maybe he'll be able to answer about collecting, do send us a PM. Ken is on the website, Alex is on the website, and we'd love to have you back on and put some of these questions to you, and also to go through some more of the areas that you particularly enjoy in the collecting and in the history of the picks and sticks with Kiss. So thank you very much for your time today, and we will have you back hopefully very soon to have some more of this discussion. So thank you all for listening, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you, guys. It was a blast. Love to do it again.
Thanks, Ken. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.